Hey, everybody, welcome back for another episode of What's Next, the podcast. And I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to get a better guest on my show ever. And you're going to understand why. She is the OG in my life of entrepreneurs, the first one that ever introduced me to the idea, probably even before she thought she was introducing me to the idea. But we've got plenty of people on the show that range in age from late teens and early 20s all the way into their 50s and 60s that are on this journey of, should I start my own business? Holy crap, I already started my own business. What the heck did I get into? Just looking for tips and tricks, what to do. So with that being said, Mom, thank you for taking some time to join me. I'm here in Michigan. You're out in Cali, our great home state and where I grew up. But thank you so much for agreeing to join me on the show.
Okay, I'm
All
ready
right.
to go.
You're ready. You feel like you're on the hot seat here.
Yes.
So let's just kick this off. I'm a little kid. You're running a hair salon, but I want to go back before I was a little kid and you and Dad were getting done with high school. What were the kind of job before you even, let's say, had an itch to be an entrepreneur? What were the kind of jobs, if any, that you were doing just to lead in through middle school, high school, even as you were thinking about life after that? What were some of your jobs?
I just worked, I know when I was in high school, I worked for a shoe shop. I don't remember the name of the shoe shop, but I used to just fill out birthday cards and do stuff like that. I learned how to do sign language there. That was fun. One of the guys that worked there taught me how to do that, which I don't remember today, but it was real fun. When I was in college, I worked at a shoe store selling the lingerie and stuff like that. I didn't sell the shoes, but I just worked behind the counter until the boss fired me because my hair, I was in beauty school, so my hair was a different color every week. And he just went, okay, the green I can't handle, but that's what I did. And then,
No,
go ahead.
you have some experience working sort of on the floor behind the counter. You're
Yeah.
going to beauty school. What was the genesis for going to beauty school? Is it like your creative nature? Did you meet somebody who had done it before? What led you to even pick that as a path?
My best friend, Patty Lou, we both were going to go to beauty school, and she went to a private school in LA, and my dad wouldn't let me do that. So I signed up for a beauty school in Bellflower. So I stayed there for a while, for a semester, but it turned out that there was no social life, and I was used to social life and going to dances and stuff like that. So I quit there and went to Cerritos College, and that's where I finished my degree there. I took some business classes and PE, obviously, and yeah, just had fun there.
And so had you already graduated from beauty school and then went back to Cerritos?
No, I only
Okay.
went like a semester at the other school, at the private school, but there was no social life. So there was just, I didn't enjoy it at all. I needed the football games and you needed the social activity. And so that's when I started it. I couldn't transfer any of the hours. I couldn't remember if you had to start over. So I could get out of there in a year and a half. And that's where I stayed, was there. So I could learn therapy and all the stuff I needed to know. Yeah.
And then so you finish at Cerritos. This has got to be around sort of early 50s, right? So
Yeah. Late 50s. So
late 50s.
yeah.
Okay.
I
And
graduated from high school in 62.
okay. All right. So that's right. You're out of high school in 62. So mid 60s. You mentioned taking some business classes. I'm trying to sort of harken back in time. What was the mix 50-50? I can't imagine it was in class. It doesn't seem like many women were taking business classes. If I sort of think back historically of what was on TV from Leave It to Beavers and the like, it's sort
Well,
of mom was at home, but you're taking business classes. So how was that?
it was one business class all I took. Yeah. Just to learn finance and simple stuff. And it was beneficial. I was going to go for a degree. And so you have to do more than just the cosmetology. You have to have other credits too. So I thought that would be a beneficial class for me if I was going to be a beautician. At that time, I didn't really think I was going to own a shop. It turned out I did, but later, much later. Yeah.
One of the recurring themes that we've had in guests with the show is, and you just touched on it, which is what I started to do isn't where I ended up being and doing, but I had to start somewhere. So it sounds like, all right, you go to Cerritos, you're getting ready to come out. Is the first transition of job into a salon, obviously it's run by
Yes.
somebody else. And what was that experience like?
I had taken my test and didn't have my license yet. but I went and applied for a job, and he hired me knowing or hoping that I would get my license. And I was hoping I would pass too, because they don't tell you right away. You have to wait to see if they send you your license back then. So I just worked there, and finally I got my license. So then I stayed there until I was pregnant with you. And then I couldn't reach around the shampoo bowl to shampoo. So my tummy was too big. So I had to quit. And so then I was a stay-at-home mom for years until all three of the boys were born, and then just ended up just a mom, just taking care of the house and the finances and all of that stuff. Yeah.
I'm sure as you say that in sort of all lowercase, a lot of the people listening would say it's uppercase, underline, just a mom. I think even today we think about, and fast forward 40, 50 years, 56 in my case, just a mom is like running an enterprise, right? And so
Yeah.
I remember you had envelopes for everything from our school clothes to birthdays, Christmas gifts, back to school clothes. So managing that, obviously myself, Steve and Matt are now born. Do you remember what was the transition? So was it after we were all back in school that you thought, all right, I'm going to go back and cut hair? Was it by choice? Was it maybe not by choice and something you and dad decided to do? How did that come about?
No, Dad and I decided that as long as we could afford it, that he wanted me to be home with you guys and to have the house. When you came home from school, I was there, whether I was baking and I enjoyed baking and cooking and doing all that stuff and sewing. I did a lot of sewing because I sewed a lot of your clothes when you were little, and your diapers and everything. It seemed like I sewed. That was my passion. I really enjoyed that. Yeah.
My memory is certainly vague on this. At what point in time did you go back and at least start cutting hair part-time? And then how does that transition to, at what point in time do you say, I'm going to go for it and I'm going to do my own salon?
Dad got laid off. And so that kind of, I said, I need to go back to work. You guys were all in high school. I think you were already in college when I started at the beauty shop. What was it? Genora's when I started there. Yeah. Gosh. Yeah, that was long. And Dad kept saying, no, let's just enjoy our time together. And, while I'm laid off, and I'm going, I know, but there's no money coming in and I can't go to work and just instantly have cash. Okay. You have to build a clientele and start from scratch. That took a while, but then I stayed with there and I worked there for 5 years. And then the owner wanted to sell the shop. And so I thought I was going to go into partners with one of the girls that worked there, but then she backed out and I said, that's okay. I'll do it by myself anyway. So we took a loan out on the home and did it, and I ran it. Everybody worked for me at that time. You didn't rent stations when I first started. It was I had to do all the payroll, and wow, that was a learning curve really for me because I had to get a computer. You kept saying, Mom, you need to get a computer. And I go, I don't even know anything. I just write it on paper. I can do that. But thank goodness I had a good friend down the street that was in business for herself. And she taught me how to use the computer and what kind of program to get. And I just did QuickBook because that was simple. And they helped me a lot too. When I would call and I wouldn't have all the information I needed, it was a real learning curve. And I really learned a lot. I learned a lot about myself and how to run a business. And it was hard to go from a coworker to an owner because you would tell them, okay, girls, we need to do this or we need to do that. And they'd go, yeah, okay, Pat, because we were just, we worked together for 5 years and then now I'm all of a sudden the boss, So.
Man, okay, we're going to come back to that because I know that question comes up quite a bit with people. And shout out to our friends at QuickBooks. By the way, this was back for our younger viewers. They're going to say, what do you mean go get a computer? Doesn't everybody have one? You took a leap of faith. This was in the late 80s, early 90s when we're still putting floppy disks in computers and crossing our fingers that everything got saved. And in all of our businesses, we use QuickBooks as well. So that it survived the test of time. So you and Dad take a loan on the home. What was that conversation like? Because, for 99.999% of the people watching this, no idea who my dad is. Engineer, smart as a whip. But I think he'd tell you if he was on the show, not an entrepreneur at heart. So you come to dad with this idea of originally I was going to have a partner. Now I'm not. We're going to leverage basically the house, which back then
Yeah,
I'm sure you could go over 100% the equity of your home, which is a big oh crap moment. Cause if it doesn't work out, you're going to
that's
lose.
right. Yeah.
So yeah, what was that conversation to what you can remember of it with dad and
God,
what
I
you
remember
convince him to say
starting.
yes? How did it work out?
Yeah, at first he's going, I don't think so. I don't, I'd already worked there 5 years, so I was pretty established by that time too. And I just said, I know I can do it. So you just have to have faith. And so I didn't really draw a paycheck. I just tried to pay off the loan and pay off the house and get out from underneath that. So that was my main goal. It wasn't so much to make money for myself as it was to make some money for, the house and for you guys, because you were going to school and I needed to pay tuitions and I need to do that. So that came from my paycheck too. And it all seemed to work out, it just, so dad goes, if you think you can do it, because you do the books, you know what we have and what we don't have. And if you can afford it. So I said, let's just go for it. I'll keep them separate. So you keep the house in one bank and then I keep the other one, my business in another bank. So they're separate. And that's what I did. And I did it for about 11 years. Yeah. Until the landlord decided to raise my rent up $700. And I went, okay, it's time to move. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. I do remember now because I was coming back. I went to school at San Diego State, folks. So it's about an hour south of where I grew up in San Juan Capistrano, Dana Point. I do remember coming back on some weekends and I'd say help you with the books, but I don't think I was really helpful, just more on the computer
Yeah.
side. But I do remember you specifically saying that there was sort of this division of church and state, that there was the business accounts and home accounts.
Yeah.
And I would say to everybody who's thinking about making some leap into business, this is a proving of the test of time thing. Don't commingle your funds.
Yeah.
Because I've met with so many young entrepreneurs that when they get to the end of the year, number one, they don't actually know whether they made money or not, regardless of what their lifestyle is. And especially in today's world where credit can be king and you may be spending more than you're getting, but you
Yeah.
look at, we're going on vacations and we're doing this, separate those two things because as mom just pointed out, it allows you to take an inventory of, is this working or not? And ultimately,
Yeah.
11 years later,
Right.
$700 a month in rent increase may not have seemed like a big deal had those funds all been pulled together. But because you were looking at the business every day, week, month, you
Yeah.
knew that was non-negotiable. And so you were able to make that decision to say, I'm not going to go down a bad thing by saying yes to higher rent. I'm going to
Right.
draw a line in the sand. And ultimately, you made a very wise decision, which was it had its time, did it for over a decade, and it served its purpose,
Yeah.
right? Like you said, paid some bills, got us into college and through other savings that you and dad are now getting ready to go on a pretty epic cross Canada trip.
I know that'll be a fun trip.
Yeah,
Gosh.
the work and the savings. So you're still all these years later, sort of living the fruits of having been smart and frugal and disciplined to do that along the way. So 11 years wraps up. Do you sell the business? Do you just shut it down? And then
No, I
kind of,
just closed the doors. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. There was somebody who wanted the salon space, but it stayed empty for about a year and a half, which I was
Mm,
tickled because I went, that's a year and a half that you would have had my regular rent, but so all of us girls moved to another salon, which they rent. And the girls that came with me were used to me just doing their books and giving them a paycheck. And so they said, can you do that just for another year until we get settled? So I still, even though we were in another salon and paying their rent with, with the money that I had that they would give me because I was still doing all of their books with, and even the end of the year stuff I was still doing. So finally I said, okay, girls, it's time, we need to cut the string and you guys need to go on your own so I can just, handle my business and do what I need to do because you're self-employed then when you're running a station. Yeah.
yeah.
So it was simpler.
You did touch on, so you go from what a cool and interesting transition, sort of employee slash running your own station to owning the shop and then back again. But in the transition from, okay, now I'm going to be owner, you'd mentioned that's pretty tough because you're talking to your friends who, when you all worked for somebody else,
Yeah, that's
friends
it.
suddenly become your employees. And I know this happens for a lot of us. We're in love with the business that we're in. Somehow it works out that an owner or somehow we have the opportunity to go there and we elevate from employee to employer.
Yeah.
Any words of advice that you would give that you found either, man, I totally messed this up, don't do that ever again, or hey, this worked pretty good for us? How did you make that transition? And were there any kind of tips and tricks you'd give to somebody to say, let me help you a little bit on this one if they're just getting ready to do that?
For me, it was, let's sit down and have a meeting. And I would try to write out everything I wanted, because once I got in front of them, even though I worked with them for all those years, it was still, now I'm a boss, and that was a hard transition for me. And so then we would go over different, and I said, if there's any other questions, let's lay it all on the table so I know what you expect from me and what I can give you. But, it seemed to work. It took about a year for everybody just to settle down and say, okay, we can do this, because I changed the whole shop. I remodeled it so it was totally different from what we were working with before. And I brought in retail, which we didn't have before. And I gave the girls percentage of they sold and tried to keep it as business as I could. But still, I provided stuff in the refrigerator and stuff for them to snack in case nobody had time for lunch. When we moved to the new salon, the other owner didn't do any of that. And the girls would turn to me and say, I didn't realize how good we had it over there. I go, yeah, that's right, girls. So I would bring donuts in the morning for all the customers. And I just wanted it to be a friendly place that when people came in, they felt comfortable there. And that's what you want out of a business, I would think.
Well, for a young or late teenager, young 20 something walking into a salon that had mostly ladies that were probably 3 times my age, it certainly appeared that way to me, right? Everybody was laughing and loved being there. And I remember the stories of somebody couldn't come into the shop because of a stay in a hospital or a surgery, and someone would go to their home, including you, do their hair that day to keep that sort of family atmosphere going.
Right.
Was that in part just who you were, or was it because of where you worked before? You said, gosh, it wasn't happening somewhere, I wanted to change it? Or was it just, I don't know, that's how I'd want it to be if I was there?
It wasn't as friendly as I wanted. I just wanted it to be when people walked in. It wasn't all clean it was all clean, like sterile, just black and white and everything. I wanted it to be more homey looking, and that I didn't know anything different. So that was what that's how I decorated it. And that's how I tried to treat the girls, just let's all be friendly. And I had a few Mexican girls that worked with me, and they spoke English very well. But when their mom would come in or something, they would continue to talk in Spanish. And I would say, you can't do that because the other customers think that you're talking about them, because they might not understand English. So they took, they didn't really like that. But everybody turned around and said, yeah, you're right. Even religion, somebody gets on a religion kick and, the person sitting next to them doesn't want to listen to that. I said, you need to keep the conversation just light and, be friendly. But, that's all I could do. Yeah.
It's those words of advice hold true probably ever more today for anybody who's been, whether it's a barbershop for me and all those years cutting my hair. And unfortunately, in Michigan, I've got to go somewhere else. But yeah, it's pretty amazing in some shops where they just don't keep a lid on it, and it isn't very comfortable. So it doesn't make you want to come back. Even though you're there for a haircut, you leave because of those side conversations. So again, going back to some of the tough decisions you have to make as owners, because they don't always make everybody happy, but try to run a bigger, better business, right?
It makes them a little uncomfortable, I guess, to say you shouldn't do that. It's just not, it's not right. It doesn't make everybody else feel comfortable.
Exactly. So I don't know if it's even possible to think about this, but let's imagine that you never had those 11 years of running your own shop. Would you be better off for it or worse off for it, and why?
Oh no, better off for it. Because you learn a lot about people. You learn a lot about business, obviously, because you have workers' comp, you have so many different things that you have to budget for and, set everything aside. And no, I wouldn't change that for nothing. That was a true experience. And I think everybody appreciated it after it was all said and done. When they go somewhere else, then all of a sudden they go, wow, okay, yeah, we used to do this for it and used to do that. Now I don't, I have to do all that myself, Yeah.
Yeah. I know reflecting back on it for me, it was my first sort of view of what customer service looked like. And the cool thing was, I don't think at any point in time, I really don't believe at any point in time you had said, hey, this is an example of entrepreneurialism or solopreneurialism or customer service or whatever it might be. You were just sort of living, number one, how you wanted to live, right? Whether it
Yeah.
was a Sunday, a Tuesday, a Friday, you were the same at the shop as you were at home. And I can attest to that because there was plenty of permanent solution smell in our home,
Yes.
non-work hours. Work didn't always, work definitely wasn't only 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And all of us entrepreneurs know that one. There is no such thing as 9 to 5 when it comes to owning your
Yeah.
own place.
Everybody
Yep.
always take a trip, do so you own it, just go. And I go, yeah, I can't do that. That's hard.
Yeah. It is the challenge, right? Can we build a business that can operate when we're not there?
Yeah.
And I think that's how we build something that is, proves the test of time. So if you and
Yeah.
dad are going to go across Canada for 18 days, if you still own the shop, you'd want to know the books were getting done and workman's comp was getting paid and customers were still being taken care of and all those wonderful things.
Right.
And it
Yeah.
is one of the biggest challenges about being in business for yourself is not so much how do you clone yourself, but how do you build a culture around, I'm hoping it works as good, if not better, when I'm not here. And
Yeah.
that's the big challenge. Do you have those 11-ish years, let's say, would you wished it was 21 years or 31 years, or was 11 kind of, yeah, it was the right number for you? Or do you wish you would have started it earlier or ended it later had you not been forced to pay higher rent or whatever it might be?
After that 11 years, and then we worked at another salon. So I still was doing, but I didn't have all the bookwork. That was the part that was the change for me is I only had to take care of myself. And, that made work much easier. And I don't know. And we moved around and then we stayed together. So there was like 3 or 4 of us that would go from shop to shop. I mean, we went to 3 different shops after we closed Classic Styles. Yeah. After we closed that one. And then thank goodness I quit because I was going to have knee surgery and I knew I would be out for a while in a knee replacement. And actually, yeah, I fell at work. I tripped over a cord and broke my kneecap. And so I hit the floor pretty hard. That was right before I was going to have my knee replacement. So I knew I had to quit. And so it was time. It was time. I was pretty much done, but I had done everybody for probably about 30 years. Yeah. I still have one lady that I do today.
She's your OG. She's made it
Yeah.
through all the years with you.
Yeah, she's in a home. So I go and do her hair and just chit chat with her. Yeah.
So I guess that's probably a pretty good segue. There is work, right? So we say the difference between a vocation and occupation. Occupation is the work that you go do. A vocation is something you're probably called to do, you're really good at.
Yeah.
From my point of view, it certainly seemed that being a hairdresser, a stylist, I don't know. I don't remember ever seeing you unhappy doing that. You may have been sore and standing up and hands
Yeah.
getting pretty
Yeah, I
cranky.
enjoyed my work. I really enjoyed it. It was fun. I had a great group of girls that worked for me and I had a great clientele. And if you get somebody that's you know, a troublemaker, then you get rid of them. It's what you have to do. I've only had to fire a couple people and that was hard for me, to do that. But, you know, she was leaving her kids in the car and trying to work and going, that's just not acceptable. You can't do that. Little
Yeah.
kids. And
Anybody that knows my mom, we were the Kool-Aid house for sure. Anybody that knows my mom, if you said Pat Finnerty and Mrs. Claus in the same,
it,
love to make everybody happy, keep the thing going, keep the fun
that's
happening. But yeah, I can't imagine letting somebody go was fun. Those are the bumps that come along the way to doing that. So if you could rewind and you go back to your, let's say, graduating from high school, 18-year-old self, what do you tell yourself now, or what do you tell yourself then that you've learned over all these years? What's the one or two big piece of advice? Because I think there's a lot of people that may see themselves in the younger version of you and say, man, what do I wish I knew? So if you can go back and talk to Pat Finnerty at 18, what do you tell her now?
Wow, that's a tough one. I don't know. Follow your dreams. You know, you've just got to stick your neck out there and do it. I really don't know how to answer that, but
I think you just did, right? I think most people are pretty afraid that if they make a mistake, it's going to be a defining somehow moment in their life, especially
yeah,
at 18, 19, 20.
you, you learn a lot every step of the way. And, you just got to find your niche. And, you know, I enjoy sewing. I do sewing every day. But everybody goes, why don't you sell it? And I said, because then it's a job. I don't want another job, you know, and you have to enjoy what you do and you have to look forward to going to work every day. And if you're not happy, don't do it. You know, that's like dad. He worked as an engineering and he didn't really enjoy the job that much. And I'm going, find something that you enjoy doing. I'll work hard to keep you in whatever you want to do too, so you'll be happy every day. That's more important than the money, I would think, you know?
Well, and typically the money follows. You just heard it from the
Yeah.
OG entrepreneur here that, take a risk, do what you love to do. And I think our guests have heard that literally almost from every one of our people that join us on an
Yeah.
interview, that they just love what they do. And they
Yeah.
may not have started there. They were working
Yeah.
for somebody else. They were at a factory. They were at a XYZ, but they figured out what they love to do and they took a chance and they
Yeah.
went and did that. And some of our guests have played pro sports for 11 years and others super smart and have a couple of private jets and whatever their idea
Yeah.
of success is, but they're doing what they love. So I think that's pretty cool. All right, Mom, I'm going to leave you with one last one here. What do you want your grandkids or maybe even your great grandkids, now that we're getting to that age, what do you want them to know about you? Maybe not even just about sort of entrepreneurialism and work, but what is it that you want them to know about you as a person? Because I look at you as you're a legacy changer. So you took the legacy from our family, that even as it goes back into Ireland on both sides, here in the US, born and raised, and really set in motion this idea that, yeah, if you want to do what you love to do, and you encouraged me to play soccer at a time when we weren't making millions,
Yeah.
by any stretch, but your encouragement was go do what you love to do and the rest will take care of itself. And I think that's worked out pretty well. What do you want your grandkids and your grandkids to look back and go, wow, man, great grandma started that. What is about you that you want them to know?
I don't, I would say, you know, just try to do what you enjoy doing and be happy. The money will come if that's your goal. But if it's a lot of people don't care about money,
Hmm.
and, they need to be comfortable with what they're doing. And I look at my grandkids and God, we're so blessed to have four. I just, don't see them as often as I would love to. It is what it is. I just want to hug them and just want them to be happy. That's it. If you have problems, you need to talk about it and get it out in the open and take care of it. I, that's all I can think of.
It's good. Those are pretty sound words right there. Strive to be
Yeah.
happy. When there's conflict, bring it to the surface. Don't bury it. I think we all
Yeah.
struggle with that in general.
Yes.
That's good because you're a change agent, right? We talked with one of our guests earlier about not having this sort of family dynamic growing up in. And he was determined to be that change agent, to say, no, the rest of the generations after me are not going to know brokenness and
Right.
abuse and hurt. And so each of us has our own thing, and yours is
Right.
clearly chase after what makes you happy, and if there's an issue, bring it to the top. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Mom. I appreciate you joining me personally, sort of formally. We have coffee talks every now and then, especially when I'm back in California, but thank you for joining. Folks, thank you for tuning in. This is been a very special episode for me. And if you like to see more of this, please subscribe. Join us on the What's Next podcast journey. And all the notes are down below in the links. So you can find us there, follow us on social, subscribe. And as always, keep striving for what's next. Thanks, guys.
All right. My hand is, I love you.
Love you, Mom.